In the early 1900s, coal miners found this sort of ingenious and adorable way of figuring out if a mine was safe. They would take a canary down with them in a little cage, and because canaries are more sensitive to toxic gases like methane, if a canary started acting differently, and they'd be paying attention to the canary while they were mining, they would know that it was time to get out. So, for example, they might drop over kind of unconscious, and so then the miners would know, like, okay, it's time to get out. Or they might just stop singing or start rattling their cage, and that would clue the miners in to the fact that something was wrong. If you had talked to me a year ago, I would have told you that I felt like a canary in a coal mine. I felt like there were toxic gases swirling around that were killing me, but that nobody else seemed aware of. And that was tough. That was really tough. I spent a lot of time wondering if I was too sensitive. I spent a lot of time thinking like maybe I was making a big deal out of nothing. I spent a lot of time talking to my therapist and trying to figure out if the problem was me. I spent a lot of time talking to people in my life and seeing if we could make some changes. And I did eventually make some changes. And I've spent the last year sort of detoxing from that state of constant panic and overstimulation. So I thought that in today's video, I'd spend a little bit of time talking about the steps that I've taken over this year to go from just like constantly stressed, overstimulated, I'm a canary in a coal mine, to where I am now, which is not perfect, but it is like a much more normal and manageable level of anxiety and stress and all of those things. So let's get started. The first thing that I had to do was really work on being where my feet are, being present. That's not something that comes supernaturally to me. I tend to stifle any emotion I perceive as negative, and stress and anxiety are certainly in that category. And I also tend to not pay attention to the things around me. So something that my therapist has been very consistent on is that I need to be present in the moment. I need to not plan for things that are beyond my control and will just make me anxious. I need to not be just like always trying to figure out and read between the lines. I need to not just be always like running things over in my mind, living in the past, living in the future. I need to be right here in the present, because that is the only time that I really have to enjoy and to live and to effectively like make a difference in. And so I would say that was the first thing. And I started that even before making big changes in my life, was just trying in little ways to practice being in this moment instead of the next moment or the last one. The second thing that I had to start, and this really came into effect about a year ago, was redefining my relationship with worth and rest and productivity. And I know this is gonna sound like cliche, but when I quit my full-time like corporate job and went into business for myself, I really struggled with feelings of self-worth. I didn't know like if I wasn't contributing the same amount to our family and to our budget, if I was worth as much. And that's a very like twisted way of saying that. And it certainly wasn't an expectation that my husband put on me. But for me, it was like I had taken a lot of pride in the fact that I was able to contribute. And so when I cut those hours back, and, you know, the first few months of starting your own business, you're trying to find clients and everything, that really shook me at like an identity level that I wasn't expecting. And so then when I didn't have anything to do and I was trying to rest, I didn't feel like I had earned it. And, you know, whereas before I was constantly busy, I was overstimulated, I was always trying to be on top of my inbox and stay on top of trends and do all of these things. And so when I did have a minute to rest, I would really feel like I earned it, but it also wasn't super restful at the same time, because I was thinking about all the things I still had to do once I was no longer resting. And so the key here for me was, first of all, realizing that my worth is not in what I am able to accomplish. And also that even though goals and accomplishments and things are not unimportant, that rest is equally as important. And it's not a reward for a job well done. It is something that I need to take care of myself. So yeah, that's been a bit of a struggle for me. It's something that is much easier for me to give to other people. Like, it's much easier for me to say that to my husband than it is for me to tell myself. But that is something that I have been working on over the past year and slowly making strides toward viewing rest in a much more healthy way. The next thing that I had to do in order to get rid of like the things that just were really setting me off and overstimulating me was to be okay not being the person in the know, not being always the first to hear a news story or knowing all of the trends. I wouldn't say that this has ever been me, to be honest, but there's a certain expectation, especially like in the marketing and social media field that I come from, that you're just always up to date on all the things all the time. And I was trying my best. I was trying to do that, and it was not good for me. I'm not saying that no one can do it, but like for my mental health and my well-being, it was too much. There was too much going on all the time to process, trying to do. There were things going on in my regular life that would feel overwhelming because of the amount of information and decisions I was having to process throughout the day. And so I had to make the decision like, okay, I can continue down this road, always checking social media, always refreshing my news, trying to figure out like what the latest updates and strategies and best practices are, or I can take a step back and focus more on like tried and true things. That's part of the reason that I went to writing as my freelance business, because I know how to write. That is classic. Yes, ChatGPT and AI are changing the copywriting landscape. But the thing about like ChatGPT and other AI writing software is that like they're only as helpful as they have the ability to write well. And so knowing what good writing is, knowing what less good writing is, that's still a very valuable skill. And so just sort of going back to the classics, when I started a YouTube channel, I picked YouTube because I was like, okay, YouTube, even though like there definitely are trends and there are, highs and there are lows, the content does still get engagement. It's not like, Instagram or TikTok where you put something up there and then it's probably not gonna get very much views past like the first week. So that was one of the things that went into my decision to start a YouTube channel versus like another channel as well, is because I was like, all right, if I just start doing a bunch of short form video content on TikTok or Instagram or whatever, the shelf life is not as long. And I'm also having to keep up with all the trends all the time, which for my overstimulated nervous system was just not going to be a thing. And then the next sort of change that I had to make after I did that was I felt like that was just like turning off something that was overstimulating me. But then I had to go deeper. I had to go, okay, what is actually driving this desire to always be in the know and always like be on top of the latest trends and know what exactly is going on? The thing that is like overstimulating me was also something that was very hard for me to let go of. And I wanted to know why. And I think that this relates back to what my struggle was with taking a pay cut, what my struggle was with, letting go of my know-how and my need to be like right in the middle of what was happening. And I think that it was just not feeling like I was enough or like we had enough. And that's a very difficult place to be. But something that I just had to tell myself over and over again was that we have enough. And I'm grateful for the gift that minimalism is, because it really does, when you practice it, show you that you have enough. Like, I love the underconsumption core trend that's going around on TikTok. Obviously, I was not the first to know about it, but I've seen some stuff on it and I love that because like, yeah, it looks like regular life. It looks like my life. But that's one of the beauties of minimalism, of underconsumption core, of like simple living, whatever you want to call it, is that if you force yourself to use things up until they're gone, if you force yourself to not have a bunch of extra things or to get rid of the things that you're not using in in favor of more space and more organized life and like really being able to take care of the things that matter to you, you realize pretty quickly that a lot of the stuff that we spend our money on, we don't really need. Like, yeah, we still need shelter, we still need food, we still need, transportation, and that takes a lot of the budget, but a lot of the extra things we don't need as much. And so gratefully, I was able to say that it was true, even taking a pay cut, even working on redefining my relationship with all of those things. But just knowing that I was enough and that I have enough was a huge shift for me. And then sort of related to this, I feel like a lot of that was happening in like the first 6 months after I made some pretty major changes in my life. And then just these last 6 months, I've really been able to focus in on like, okay, what was it I like about the changes that I've been making and which places do I want to take it further? So for example, last spring, we did a digital detox, and I'll link to one of my videos that I did about that. It was extremely helpful. If you have not read Cal Newport's Digital Minimalism, I recommend reading at least the first section. I think the whole book is worth reading, but if you're like, hey, girl, I don't have enough time to read an entire 200, 300 page book on how I need to spend less time on the screen, I already know that, cool, just read the first little bit where he talks about how to do a digital detox, because he recommends a pretty extreme way of doing it, where you just basically cut out all digital forms of entertainment, whether that is Netflix and TV or social media or checking news on your phone, all of those things. He's just get rid of them for a month and focus instead on high quality leisure, developing hobbies, doing things that you feel like you want to do, but you've never had time for, focus and doing that for just a month, and then intentionally add things back in. And so that was really, really helpful for me. I have not quit social media completely, and I don't think I probably ever will quit it completely, just because there are times, especially in my line of work, where, I'm in the marketing space. I do sometimes link to things on TikTok or Instagram or whatever in things that I'm writing. And it's just very helpful to be able to sign into an account and look things up on those platforms when you need to. I do not have the apps on my phone. That's intentional. But if I do need to check something, I check it on my laptop, and that's cool. Every once in a while, I would say probably about once a week, I'm on those platforms. And, for example, with Instagram, I might look at a few stories of people that I'm friends with. I might check out a few posts. But for the most part, I try to stay off of those, but I haven't deleted my accounts, if you know what I'm saying. I don't think that I really need to do that at this stage in my life, because it's not a big problem for me. One thing that I have noticed is that I spend a lot of time watching shorts on YouTube, which I would like to get back off of that, because that's not actually super helpful. My brain feels like mush after an hour of doing that. But anyway, the digital detox was super, super helpful. And I feel really opened the door for me to thinking more holistically about how I wanted to live my life and spend my days. I want to embrace a slower pace of living. I want to be as unplugged as I can be, so that I can practice being present more often, so that I'm not stressed by things that actually have no effect on my life. And so that if I'm actually stressed about something, it's something that's here and now, and that my body actually is having the appropriate response to the stress. I can't tell you how many times I've been on social media, and I'm sure you have too. And, maybe you see a conversation going off the rails on Facebook or Twitter, or you see somebody that you care about, but maybe you haven't kept in contact with, maybe they've lost someone dear to them. Maybe they post something that you don't agree with, and your blood pressure goes up, your heart starts racing, your body's having a stress response. And we're just inundating ourselves with stuff like that all the time. And that's not even taking into consideration professional concerns and deadlines and, the life that we live and the things that stress us out every single day. And so I realized that's not the kind of life I want to live. I want to live a life that is intentional, where I have time for what Cal Newport calls high quality leisure, but hobbies that really, bring joy to my life or help me process or be more emotionally healthy, like journaling, reading, things like that. At the end of the day, I think that the key for me to going from overstimulated to fairly serene most of the time was, first of all, realizing that the fact that I am overstimulated is not a personal flaw. It's a warning. It's a sign that something is off. It's a signal to get out of the mind. Like, yeah, I feel like the canary, but I'm not actually a canary. I'm a human. And so I can pick myself up and say, okay, there is something going on in my body that is telling me that something's wrong. What is it? What is causing me to feel like this? And I think the second thing is just to understand that there were a lot of insecurities fueling my desire to keep engaging with the things that were overstimulating me. And I'm not saying that, social media or anything like that is going to be overstimulating for every single person. I'm not going to say that you personally have a struggle with wanting to be the first to know everything and always be on top of things and always be impressing people that way. Maybe that's a struggle that I have, but maybe if you're feeling overstimulated and you're watching this video, there's something else that is always keeping you up, keeping you worried, keeping your heart rate beating during the day. And so just pay attention to what those things are. Pay attention to where your mind wanders when you can't sleep at night, or when you're pinching yourself or picking at your nails during a break. Pay attention to the phrases that people use that sort of set you off and make you feel overstimulated, the environments. And then do what you can to either limit your exposure to those things or figure out what's really going on. And in my case, I had to do both. And I don't think I really could have figured out what was going on without limiting my exposure to some of those things. And so it takes practice, it takes commitment, and it honestly probably takes people supporting you as well. Because I had my husband, I had my therapist, I had other people that I could go to, and I could say, I'm thinking that maybe this could be the problem. And they could see, yeah, I could see that. Or, I don't think you really struggle with that. And so I think at the end of the day, I don't have all the answers. I think it's a very personal journey from overstimulated to peaceful. But I want to tell you, a year after telling my husband, hey, yeah, I just feel like the canary in a coal mine. I feel like I'm about to be unconscious and nobody else even knows what's going on. I just feel so stressed all the time that there is hope. There's another way. And if you can figure out what those things are and slow them down, your life is going to be better for it. And so I hope that this video helped you. I hope it was inspiring to you. Please let me know in the comments your thoughts or maybe your experience with adding more peace into your life. And I'll see you in the next video.